Hi, welcome to SBR Videos. I'm Peter Loshak. Today is Tuesday, April 12th. We are talking with SBR contributing NHL handicapper Dana Lane. We're taking a look at the futures odds for the Stanley Cup. The odds are out. I'm going to be quoting the latest lines from Pinnacle. Of course, these lines will move, and with line shopping, you can get better odds or worse odds at other places. Dana Lane, thanks for being back with us. We just did an in-depth analysis of both the East and the West, and now we're going to discuss the odds to win it all. And it's interesting. Obviously, Dallas is the top seed in the West, and you gave the opinion that you like them to win the West. You think there's value with them at just plus 451 to win the West. And Dana Lane, right now at Pinnacle, the Dallas Stars are the 8th choice to win the Stanley Cup. There are 7 other teams with shorter odds than Dallas. They're plus 1024, about 10 to 1 to win the Stanley Cup. Anaheim, St. Louis, Pittsburgh, Chicago, the Kings, and the Capitals all have shorter odds than Dallas. What do you think about that, Dana Lane?
Isn't that amazing? The top seed in the West is completely undervalued.
Yeah.
And let's understand a couple things. Okay, when they set these odds, they're like, okay, you're going to have the big city teams up there. Not that Dallas isn't a big city, but you're going to have. They want action. So what they do is the teams that are the bigger teams that have a legitimate shot of winning are going to have the better odds, regardless if Dallas had a better year or not. I mean, the difference between Dallas and say St. Louis is not that much different when you're talking about the division. Even though Dallas is to me it's a better team. I think that Dallas has been disrespected most of the year. I don't think people respected their goaltending, but now that they're both of their goaltending and Niemi and Lettinen are starting to play better, I think they are an extremely formidable foe going forward.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. I actually misspoke. They're not the 8th choice, they're the 7th choice. There's a 7th choice. There's 6 teams with shorter odds, but still, that's pretty incredible. And the 8th, I'm sorry?
Yeah, they're still undervalued.
Yeah, and the 8th choice, though, is Florida. And when we did our Eastern Conference preview, you gave the opinion, and I agreed with it. That's how I was thinking before the call, that Florida at about 6.5 to 1 might be the best bet to win the Eastern Conference. And they are the 8th choice to win the Stanley Cup at more than 15 to 1. Right now at Pinnacle, plus 1541. Do they have a legitimate shot of winning the Stanley Cup, and is there maybe some value there on Florida?
Yeah, I love Florida. I mean, like we talked about in the previous video, their ability to overcome 2 teams twice in that Atlantic division showed me a lot of grit. And grit is what wins in the playoffs, and especially in the Stanley Cup Finals. And don't think for a second that Roberto Luongo doesn't remember how he got basically booted out of Vancouver for losing that Stanley Cup Final against the Boston Bruins. So I think there's a little bit of an extra push for Luongo to play well. And the teams coming out of the East certainly have an easier road than, say, a Dallas who would come out of the West for me. The only series that I think Florida would have a very difficult time with is potentially a Washington series if they get by Pittsburgh. But to me, I don't know how much Washington will have left in the tank because that series against Pittsburgh figures to be a long one.
Yeah, and Washington, of course, is the favorite to win the Stanley Cup right now at Pinnacle, plus 408. So that's about 4 to 1. You think there's no value there?
Absolutely not. I mean, I've never been a guy that's going to just jump on the top team. And that's never, I mean, we've seen President Cup trophy winners fall flat on their face in the playoffs. And the Blackhawks have done well. But besides them, obviously, this is not the side to go on. We have even the Washington Capitals within the last recent time. They've won the President's Cup trophy before and then fell flat on their face as they went into the playoffs. And you can say that they're a deeper team, and they certainly are. But I certainly don't like a team that's had to kind of go through the motions for 2 weeks because we certainly don't know internally how well Washington, what we're going to get out of the Washington Capitals when their backs are up against the wall. We have not seen that team. The only team that we've seen lately is a team that lost 4-0 to Arizona and played close games against teams they had no business even being. The opposing teams being close with.
And then the second choice is the LA Kings to win it all. The second choice, the LA Kings at plus 674. And you've already given the opinion that you think that they're going to go out in the first round. You think the Sharks are going to beat LA, but market wide, they are the second choice to win it all at plus 674. I assume you think that's a ridiculous line.
Oh, not ridiculous. I mean, certainly they're trying to. They don't want to get loaded up with LA money at a huge price. But I think the San Jose team is, especially with a team that's going on the road, because obviously their road record is so much better than their home record. But I do think that San Jose has a legitimate chance of beating Mike Quick I would say that it's not Mike Quick. Mike Quick was the former Philadelphia Eagle,
Right,
but
Jonathan Quick.
yeah, Jonathan Quick, do it all the time. But I'm just not. I think their battle inside the Pacific Division all year. I didn't like the way that they played down the stretch. I didn't like the way they played against a Ducks team even though the recent game was a 2-1 victory, I don't think Anaheim's that good of a team. I know people are going to roll their eyes about that, but offensively, you got to have something. You got to put the puck in the back of the net to win Stanley Cups, and I just don't think Anaheim has that. I think San Jose's got a much better mix of offense and defense ability, and outside of the physical dominance that LA might have in this series, I just think San Jose is a tick better than the Kings at this point.
All right. And then what about Chicago and the Penguins? You know, the Blackhawks, again, shot metrics declining. They're getting old, but they have the pedigree. They're 7.5 to 1 to win the whole thing. And then the Penguins are plus 940, 9.5 to 1. And again, after the coaching change, their even strength shot metrics got a lot better. Best in the East, I believe. So maybe the Penguins at plus 940 have some value. What do you think?
Certainly so. The only problem is they have to go through Washington. And don't get me wrong. I mean, even though I don't like Washington to win the Cup, they're certainly the best team in the National Hockey League. But I do also think that if you gave the season a regular season another 2 to 3 weeks, Pittsburgh would certainly be in that conversation with the Capitals, because Washington just seemed to glide as the year went on. And Pittsburgh recently, in a recent meeting against the Capitals, certainly sent a message. But I think when it's all said and done, the cream will rise to the top with the Capitals. I just think that when you go to the next round, I don't know what they're going to have left, but I think they're better than Pittsburgh. And you look at teams like Washington and Pittsburgh and Anaheim and LA, and people are going to want to jump on those teams because they're big team names. They've done it before. But to me, I think if you're looking to get some bang for your buck, I don't think that the Pittsburgh Penguins, in the road that they have to go through, and don't think for a second that series against the Rangers is going to be easy, because if we get the Lundqvist of old, this could be a 7-game series. So then they'll have to go through not only the Capitals, but they also have to be they will be battle tested against Lundqvist as well.
All right, and before we get your final pick to win the Stanley Cup value play, let me just quickly ask you about Tampa Bay. Obviously, they made the Stanley Cup Finals last year. Injuries are a big concern with them, but Ben Bishop in goal, a huge plus, and their odds are 26 to 1, plus 26.36. Is there maybe a little bit of value there? What do you think?
Well, I think they'll have an easy road in the first round against Detroit. I've never been a fan of Detroit. There are too many defensive lapses with Blashill's team. It's the second round against Florida that I think Tampa Bay's injuries will start to finally show up. And Bishop is fantastic, but he's going to need some help. And with Stralman out, I think even the injury to Stralman might be the biggest injury that they have. But you look up and down that roster, there's 6 to 7 guys right now that are admittingly hurt, despite the fact we always look at other players that don't even announce that they're hurt. I think that Tampa Bay right now is good for the first round, but I don't see them as an option in the second round against Florida.
All right, so let's get your final value play as of right now to win the Stanley Cup. Sounds like you're leaning towards either Dallas at about 10 to 1, the Panthers at more than 15 to 1, maybe the Blackhawks at 7.5 to 1, or the Penguins at 9.5 to 1. Who do you like, Dana Lane?
Well, the easiest road for me goes to the Florida Panthers. Their first round opponent would be the Islanders. I think they're considerably better than them, or decidingly better than them. I think the second round against Tampa, which is an injury-riddled team, I think you could get through maybe the first 2 rounds playing at the most 8 games, where if you look on the other side of the bracket, you have the Capitals and the Penguins that might play as much as 10 to 14 games because of the difficulty of their bracket. And then again, you'll have Florida going on the road to play a Washington team that might be a little bit satisfied after a win against Pittsburgh. And I think you have a goaltender in Luongo who has been to the promised land and has not won it, but certainly has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. And I think that they will have an advantage mentally in an Eastern Conference final against Washington. And then the cards are on the table. As I think that they will play the Dallas Stars in the finals, and I think that grit and their ability to overtake Boston and Tampa Bay twice in the season to easily win that division will be the difference. And not that Dallas hasn't. And obviously there was a battle with the Blues and the Blackhawks most of the season, but for me, it's about goaltending pedigree. And although Niemi and Lettinen would have to play well to actually get to that point, when it's all said and done, I'm going to go with Luongo and his history of getting teams to the Stanley Cup final.
All right. Dana Lane, awesome analysis. Florida Panthers plus 1541 currently at Pinnacle. Big long shot. We'll see how this turns out. Thanks so much, Dana.
Thanks, Pete. Appreciate your time.